I'll just start by asking, what got you interested in microbiology?
When I left school, in fact, I was told by my high school teacher to think very seriously about whether I should go on to university studies. But I decided I wanted to do chemistry. So I started chemistry, and then I decided that I didn't like the maths as much. So I moved more towards biochemistry, and ultimately then I discovered microbiology. And so it was during my probably second and third year that I discovered an interest in microbiology, and since then I've continued in that vein.
Your research was in Antarctica, is that right?
Yes.
And what drew you there in particular? Like, what makes those microorganisms so special?
Yeah, that's a valid question to ask. So, in simple terms, so throughout my career I studied different types of microorganisms. Some of them were related to ruminant animals, and I looked at the ability of ruminant animals to break down lignocellulosic material.
Yeah.
And again, it's because of the microorganisms that are in them. I also did work on classical E. coli. E. coli is like the workhorse organism, and so it's very well studied, and so it means that you can look at intricate details. And then I decided I wanted to look at something that was of environmental relevance, and so I chose a group that not many people were working on at the time. So I started to study the domain Archaea. So you know that they're distinct from bacteria, evolutionarily very distinct. And I also decided to work on low temperature because most people were working on other extremes like high temperature. And the cold biosphere is such a huge part of the planet. So Archaea were novel in terms of people didn't know much about them. And the cold biosphere is particularly relevant for basically the health of the whole planet. So the microbes that live in the cold environment, they perform very important roles. So that was my justification. Antarctica was a good location to get a source of microorganisms adapted to the cold.
So what sort of challenges did you face working in Antarctica?
Lots. Working in Antarctica is definitely challenging, and it's actually one of the reasons why I enjoy doing it too, because it's an adventure being able to go to Antarctica. It's a privilege to be able to go, and it's logistically very challenging. So when we go down, even if we went down for a few days of working in the field, to travel on the icebreaker, a round trip would be a minimum of about 6 weeks.
Wow.
So I normally go down for several months. You have to take down everything. So if you're going out into the field and you need a filtration system, you need a petrol compressor, it doesn't matter what you need, you have to bring everything. If that breaks down, well, you need some redundancy in the system so that you have extra supplies. We have some workshops to be able to repair things, but everything has to be brought down. Now, working in Antarctica just inherently is very tough. So there have been accidents with quad bikes, for example. They've caused injuries to people. And I can recall one expedition where our ship was heading towards Casey, and we travelled for about 10 days. We were just about to arrive at Casey and resupply it. And there was an accident at Davis Station. And Davis Station is 1,500 kilometres away.
Wow.
The ship had to redirect and try and push through all the ice, and it spent about a week getting to Davis Station. And in the meantime, we were in contact with the Americans so that they could look at potentially flying in an aircraft. A sea ice runway was built so that the Hercules could land, and eventually that's actually what occurred. We got doctors, additional doctors to the station to help with the person who was injured, and then the American Hercules flew in. And when it flew back from Davis to Hobart, it was the longest single flight that they had ever performed with the Hercules. And they had to model it for fuel and for wind, just to be able to determine if they could fly there. There were 19 crew from the American aircraft. And when you think about this was all because of one injury for a person on a quad bike. So, and there have been lots of others too. So there are lots of challenges with working down there. But there are also good systems in place, so it's worth the challenge.
I just wanted to know if you had any interesting stories from your science degree and your work in microbiology, any type of mishaps, anything like that.
Yeah. Well, I did mention these disasters in Antarctica.
Yeah.
And and they are pretty major, really. So we also had some helicopter crashes that occurred, and the one I was involved with, luckily the people survived, but the helicopter was completely destroyed. And it was really to do with flying under difficult conditions of low visibility and poor definition. So, you know, when you go out into the field and there's strong winds and there's very cold temperatures, and the weather can change very quickly, so it can cause problems. We also had a situation where we worked on a lake. So you imagine that you have a frozen lake surface, and we put equipment onto the surface, and then we drill a hole down through the ice, and we bring the water up directly from the lake, and it goes onto our filters. So we had mobile work shelters there, just to mention like a caravan, 2 caravans situated. We had to go back to the station because a big blizzard came. When we came back, what had occurred was the ice around where these were anchored down with ice screws had melted. And so the whole work shelters had almost melted into the lake. So we had to work out how we could work on the lake very effectively, and also then how we could recover the mobile work shelters, and of course not let them fall down, which would produce pollution, and also we would lose all of our equipment. So that's a good example of a real challenge of trying to take samples.
Was there anything you could recommend to us as undergraduate students about just something that you found that doesn't work or does work?
You mean in terms of motivation?
Yeah.
I think if you are interested, if you find an interest in a particular area, it's worth pursuing, because you just don't know what that's going to lead to. I mean, one of the things I like about the work that we do is we have a lot of hypothesis-driven science, and so we attempt to go there and address those hypotheses, but we also have a lot of discovery science.
Yeah.
And I think that that is some of the best part of doing science. So you generate data, in this case it relates to DNA sequencing, and we find out about the microbial communities. And it's like turning over a rock and seeing what's underneath. So you can find things that you would never ever predict, and that's what's really fascinating. So I think if you have enough confidence to know that you're going to do well, and you guys who are advanced science should definitely have confidence, because you know that you have a capacity to go on, to be passionate, and to be flexible with the things, the opportunities that come along, because you really don't know where they're going to lead you to. So embrace those opportunities, and no doubt you'll go on and do great things.
Do you have any recommendations as a person who's been through the whole university process as far as decision making with things like, you know, as far as getting a job in the future, and maybe decisions to make, things that you wish you'd done in university, maybe do like a lab internship or stuff like that, anything that you would perhaps recommend or dissuade us from?
I think that there are so many, there are so many paths out there, and it's trying things and then seeing where that leads, because cause and effect is not always easy to know. But if you get involved and you do things, you interact with people, then people can sometimes recognize you and they can try and create opportunities for you. Otherwise, you can, at least by interacting, you have the chance to encounter and find opportunities that might be of interest. And the things you're interested in might change. So I think continuing to engage in them means that you'll then discover things that will take you in different directions. So to have a plan now about going from A to B and that's what it's going to be, I think that would be misconceived. Go out there and explore and just discover and keep going with your ambitions. I think that would be probably the best path to take.
Thank you for coming.
You're very welcome.
And yeah, thank you for talking to us about microbiology and university and more broadly.
Good luck with your careers.
Yeah.
Thank you.